occurs when the gases in an enclosed space become so hot that they ignite, incinerating everything around them. The way Flight 28's cabin is charred tells Prothero about the nature of the fire.
Many of the seat squab, cushions, even things like the emergency evacuation cards, which are just plastic laminated cards, were pretty much undamaged. You could have wiped them off and put them on another aircraft and nobody would have known they'd been in this accident, whereas at the upper levels in the fuselage there was a great deal of heat damage, and this is not a characteristic of a flashover.
The fire in the cabin had been severe, but should not have been catastrophic. This leaves investigators with two questions. Why did so many people die? And what caused the fire? The answer to the second question may be outside the plane, lying on the runway. Investigators find a large piece of dome-shaped metal along the plane's path. Stephen Moss can see it's from a piece of the engine called a combustor can.
It looks like there'd been a separation of the can from the front end from the back end.
The combustion chamber of the 737's jet engines contains 9 combustor cans. It's where fuel and air are mixed and ignited, so each can needs to withstand intense heat. Moss suspects the fractured can somehow blew apart and destroyed the plane's left engine.
It had struck an underwing fuel tank access panel and put a sizable hole in that, which directly led to the release of a vast quantity of fuel.
Proving the piece of the combustion can penetrated the wing is easy. It fits neatly into the hole in the wing.
This was clearly, if you like, the root cause of the accident.
The engine on the plane is a Pratt & Whitney JT8D. For Moss, that's of grave concern.
At the time, was probably the most widely used jet engine on commercial air transport in the world. And it was obviously pretty urgent that we try and find the cause of this one in order to prevent other aircraft having the same problem.
There are tens of thousands of combustor cans in service around the world. One of them erupted in Manchester. Stephen Moss needs to find out why it failed. And fast. Investigators looking into the deadly fire on board British Air Tour's Flight 28 study the plane's maintenance log. They discover the combustor can that ruptured had previously been repaired.
We needed to look at that repair and how effective it was.
During a routine inspection a year and a half earlier, mechanics had found small cracks in some of the combustor cans.
It was certainly not uncommon to find fatigue cracks in the cans. They're operating in a high temperature environment. The manuals give various schemes for repairing these cracks.
Investigators find mechanics repaired the cracks according to a procedure laid out in the engine repair manual. They welded them closed. But the crack on can number 9 was unusually long.
The overhaul manual did not give any limit on the length of crack that could be repaired, and it was a longer crack than had been experienced before. It was still repaired.
After the repaired cans were put back in the engine, mechanics had no way of knowing the weld didn't effectively seal the crack. That's because the cans can't be inspected while the engine is on the plane. Since the repair, there were 11 reports of slow acceleration from the engine that exploded in Manchester. A damaged combustor can could have been a reason for the problem. But troubleshooting guides available to mechanics in Manchester didn't list that as a potential cause. Instead, Pratt & Whitney offered other ways to fix the acceleration problem.
It didn't seem to ring any great alarm bells with them, if you like. They'd seen it before, and it had never turned out to be anything serious.
So mechanics in Manchester made minor adjustments to fix the plane's idle speed and kept the plane in operation. Cockpit voice recordings reveal that the crew of Flight 28 was aware there was a problem with slow acceleration.
Slow acceleration on number 1 engine the day before yesterday.
I was on the flight, yes sir.
Engineers signed off on it.
But the log entry led Captain Terrington to believe that the problem had been fixed.
A comment in the tech log for the flight before the last one that the engine was slow in accelerating. It wasn't apparent as a serious problem because the engineers had done some work and the aircraft had been flying the previous day with no problems.
The idle speed adjustments didn't fix the real problem, the cracked combustor can. And it reached the breaking point on Flight 28.
Stop it. 28 Mike, we are abandoning takeoff.
Evacuate! Evacuate! Please stay calm and don't panic.
If the airline had inspected the cans, I think there is no doubt that they would have seen the problem.
Investigators now know the origins of the Manchester disaster. The welded crack in combustor can number 9 gave way as Flight 28 sped down the runway. The front of the can was ejected from the engine and put a hole in the underside of the left wing. That led to a huge fuel leak onto the damaged engine, which caused the fire. Engine fires are not uncommon. The body of a 737 is insulated with fire-retardant material to protect the cabin. Investigators still don't understand how a fire outside the plane spread into the cabin as quickly as it did. Fire Inspector Chris Prothero finds part of the answer from viewing photographs of the plane as it sped down the runway.
It was clear from these photographs that there was a very dynamic phase to the fire whilst the aircraft was at speed on the runway, which produced this energetic, turbulent, sort of blowtorching type of fire, visually anyway, trailing behind the aircraft.
A press photo from the day of the crash leads Prothero to a new theory.
The photographs of the aircraft that appeared in the press showed the left thrust reverser deployed. The general impression that one got visually from that photograph was that the thrust reversers had effectively blowtorched fire against the side of the fuselage, and that, if you like, was the explanation as to why the fire had penetrated so quickly. That photograph and the implications of it actually therefore loomed quite large.
Stop!
There are several ways to bring a speeding jetliner to a halt. One is with the brakes.
Don't hammer the brakes.
Another is with the engine's thrust reversers. Thrust reversers redirect the exhaust from the jet engine forwards. This helps slow the plane down.
It looked as though the thrust reversers had simply blown this big fire on the left of the aircraft directly onto the side of the aircraft, directly onto the rear fuselage.
That would explain why the fire destroyed the cabin so quickly. It now seems possible that Captain Terrington made the fire worse by trying to slow his plane down. But Prothero has two good reasons to doubt his theory. One is the location where charring from the burning exhaust gas, or efflux, was found.
The efflux impinges on the fuselage further up, closer to the roof, the crown skins of the aircraft. So actually, the penetration that we had low down did not fit with that.
And the other reason is, by the time the thrust reversers were deployed, the left engine had already exploded. But to act as a blowtorch, the engine would have needed considerable exhaust.
We did